Recently, I was sitting in a coffee shop with a friend, and she was telling me about something dismissive that her partner said to her. And as she's talking, I can literally see it happening in real time. Her jaw tightens, her eyes go a bit glassy, and then she laughs it off and says, "It's fine. I'm probably just being too sensitive." And just like that, she changes the subject. But a few days later, she texts me, "I can't sleep. I've been snapping at everyone. I feel like I'm going to explode. And I don't even know why." Sound familiar? Because that right there is what unprocessed emotion looks like. And the problem is, almost none of us were ever taught what to actually do with what we feel. I'm a late diagnosed neurodivergent woman, and I grew up in a really emotionally dysregulated family. And this is exactly why I care so much about this. Professionally, I'm also a chartered psychologist, and I've been working in private practice now for well over a decade. So when I talk about learning how to process emotions, I'm not speaking from theory. I had to learn this the hard way for myself in my own life, not just in the therapy room. And the tools I use now, things like heart coherence, working with the nervous system, meditation, time in nature, real, honest human connection. These weren't handed to me in a lecture. I had to figure it out, which is exactly why I want to share them with you today, because school absolutely does not teach this, not even close. So today I want to give you a full guide. We're going to look at what emotions actually are and why so many of us avoid them, what happens in the body and the brain when we suppress them, but most importantly, how to actually process them step by step. Not just manage them, not just push them down, not just white knuckle your way through them, actually process them so they can move through you instead of running your life in the background. Let's start with the basics. What actually is an emotion? And I know that might sound like such a simple question, but I promise you, most people could not even give a coherent answer to that. And that gap is actually part of the problem, because emotions are not just feelings in the vague, fluffy sense of the word. They are biological events. They're shifts in your nervous system. They're chemical and electrical signals that are moving through the body and the brain. One of the people whose work I find really fascinating is the neuroscientist Jaak Panksepp, who spent decades mapping what he called the brain's primary emotional systems, things like seeking, fear, rage, grief, care, and play. And what's so important about that is these symptoms are deep, they're ancient, and not uniquely human. We share them with other mammals, which tells us something really important. Emotions are not a flaw, they are not a weakness, and they're definitely not something extra that some people have and other people don't. They are part of your survival wiring. They're built in. So whenever your nervous system detects something significant, a threat, a loss, a moment of joy, a sense of connection, it triggers an emotional response, and that response is meant to move. In fact, the word emotion comes from the Latin emovere, which literally means to move out or to stir up. Isn't that incredible? So the clue is right there in the word. Emotions are designed to pass through. They're not meant to be stored. And here's what happens for most of us. We learn very early on that certain emotions aren't welcome. Maybe you cried as a kid and were told you were being too dramatic. Maybe you got angry and you were punished for it. Maybe you showed fear and someone told you to toughen up. Or maybe you grew up in an environment like I did, where the emotional temperature was so unpredictable that the safest thing to do was go quiet, go inward, and not feel too much at all. So you learned to suppress. And over time, that suppression became a habit. And that habit went underground and became automatic. So now, as an adult, you might find yourself doing exactly what my friend did in that coffee shop. You feel something, and almost in the same instant, you dismiss it, rationalize it, minimize it, or distract yourself from it. And here's where it gets really important. Research from Alan Shaw shows that our early relational experiences literally shape the right hemisphere of the brain, which is the part most involved in emotional regulation. So if you grew up in an environment where your emotions weren't really met, where no one helped your nervous system settle after distress, and your ability to regulate emotions isn't just a mindset issue, it's neurological. Now, good news, this isn't permanent. The brain is highly plastic. That means it can change, but it does mean this takes real intentional work. And just to be really clear, this isn't about blame. It's about understanding the landscape you're working with. So let's talk about what suppression actually costs you. Because I think a lot of people don't make the connection between their anxiety, their sleep issues, their relationship patterns, that low-level irritability, and the pile of unprocessed emotions sitting underneath it all. Thinking about my friend again, she felt hurt when her partner dismissed her, but she laughed it off. And that emotional energy didn't just evaporate and disappear. It had to go somewhere, because emotions don't just evaporate. They get stored in the body, in muscle tension, in shallow breathing, in a nervous system that stays subtly on edge. And then a few days later, it leaks out sideways, which is snapping at people or feeling overwhelmed for no clear reason, lying awake at night, staring at that ceiling. And this idea isn't new. Even Freud talked about this, how what we repress doesn't disappear, it goes underground and it creates pressure. It starts shaping your behavior, your reactions, even your choices, often without you even realizing it. There's always more going on beneath the surface than we are consciously aware of. So that part of you that you don't fully see is still influencing how you feel, how you react, and how you move through the world. And this isn't just abstract theory. Unprocessed emotion doesn't sit quietly. It shows up in your body, in your patterns, and in your life. Now, I'm not going to turn this into a dense theoretical lecture, but it does matter to understand, at least at a big picture level, what's actually happening here. Because when you push feelings down, they don't just disappear. They take up space in your body, in your patterns, and in your relationships. They become the reason you self-sabotage, the reason you pick fights over nothing, the reason you struggle to receive love without waiting for something to go wrong. Now, there's an important nuance here, because not all feeling your emotions is actually helpful. Sometimes what looks like emotional processing can just be rumination, going over the same thoughts again and again in a way that actually makes things worse. So I want to be really clear about what we're doing here. This is not about endlessly analysing your feelings. We're not going to sit in a puddle of emotion and call it healing. Real processing is about movement. It's about letting something move through you, not getting stuck in it. There's a difference then between feeling and ruminating, and we will come back to that. But first, we need to talk about the body, because this is where a lot of approaches to emotional health fall short. We tend to treat emotions like they only exist in the mind, like they're just thoughts you can reason your way out of. But if you've ever tried to think your way out of anxiety or logic your way out of grief, you already know that doesn't work. The body is not just a vehicle for the brain. The body is where emotion lives. One of the people who really shaped how we understand this is Peter Levine, who developed something called somatic experiencing. And he uses the example of a deer facing a predator. When the threat passes, the deer shakes, literally, it trembles to discharge all that survival energy that flooded its system. And then it goes back to grazing like nothing happened. But humans don't do that. We've learned to override that process. We freeze, but we don't shake. We fight, but we don't let the adrenaline complete its cycle. We feel grief, but we stop ourselves from really crying because we're in a meeting or we don't want to make it a whole big thing. So the body holds on to it. It holds on to it in the fascia, in the gut, especially the gut, in the jaw, in the shoulders, in the chest. You know that feeling like there's a lump in your throat that you've been swallowing down for days? Well, that's not random. That's emotion that hasn't moved. So when we talk about processing emotions, we have to talk about the body. We have to talk about the nervous system, because this is where some of the most powerful and honestly most overlooked work is happening right now. The vagus nerve. If you haven't heard of this yet, you're about to, because this changes things dramatically. The vagus nerve is the longest cranial nerve in the body. It runs from your brainstem, through your throat, your heart, your lungs, your digestive system, and it's a key part of your parasympathetic nervous system. That's your rest and digest system, the system that brings you out of fight or flight. And here's the really, really powerful part. can actually influence it. You can activate it on purpose, which means you have a direct physical way to bring your body back to a calmer, safer state. And this isn't theoretical for me. I use it every single day. Simple things like cold water on your face, humming, slow, extended exhales, gargling, singing, even moving your eyes from side to side. These all help stimulate the vagus nerve. And I know some of that might sound a bit out there, but it's not. This is based on polyvagal theory, which is developed by Stephen Porges, and we can actually measure its effects on things like heart rate variability, stress response, emotional regulation. And speaking of heart rate variability, let's talk about heart coherence. This is something I've worked on both personally and professionally, and I honestly cannot overstate how powerful it is. Heart coherence is a state where your heart rhythm becomes smooth and steady, and when that happens, your whole system shifts. You feel calmer, but also clear, relaxed, but still alert. And there's a solid research behind this, and organisations like the HeartMath Institute have shown that when you're in this state, your cognitive function improves, your emotional resilience increases, and your nervous system becomes more regulated. And the best part, you can create this state on purpose through something incredibly simple: your breath. Slow, steady breathing in for about 5 to 6 seconds and out for about 5 to 6 seconds. Sometimes that's called resonance breathing. And as you're doing that, you bring your attention to the heart area and you gently focus on a feeling like appreciation, gratitude, care. I know it sounds almost too simple, but the shift it creates in your body is real. You can feel it, I promise. And I actually taught this to my friend, the same one who texted me late at night. She called me later and said it was the first time in years she'd felt genuinely calm without needing a glass of wine first. So let's get into the actual step-by-step process, because I want this to be something you can come back to, something practical, something you can actually use. So this is how I guide people to process emotions. This is what I use as well, and it's informed by a mix of somatic work, nervous system science, mindfulness, and over a decade of sitting with people in some of their hardest moments. Step 1 is notice. And I know that sounds almost too simple, but this is when most people get stuck, because noticing requires you to slow down. And most of us are moving so fast, filling every gap with our phones, with noise, with constant busyness, exactly so we don't have to notice. So the first practice is just this: create small moments to check in. You can even set a gentle reminder on your phone a few times a day. And when it goes off, just ask yourself, what's here for me right now? What am I feeling in my body? Not what am I thinking, not what should I be feeling, but what is actually here. Think back to my friend in that coffee shop. On some level, she knew something was happening. Her body was already telling her, that tight jaw and the stinging eyes or the hollow feeling in her chest. But the speed of everyday life and that automatic habit of dismissing it meant those signals got overridden almost instantly. So noticing is about catching it before that happens, before you talk yourself out of it, before you push it down. Step 2 then is name it. And this part really matters, because saying I feel bad or I feel off is just too vague to actually help you. What we're aiming for here is precision. Are you feeling hurt, rejected, anxious, overwhelmed, disappointed? Because the more clearly you can name what you're feeling, the more your brain starts to come online. And that in turn helps your nervous system begin to settle. There's real neuroscience behind this. Naming an emotion can actually reduce its intensity, and practices like the RAIN technique, so recognize, allow, investigate, and nurture, are built on this exact idea. So instead of just saying, I feel bad, can you get more specific? Is it hurt? Is it disappointment, shame, anger, grief, fear? Because these are very different emotional experiences and they need different kinds of attention. Step 3 then is allow. And this is where it gets hard, because allowing means not fixing, not rushing, not distracting yourself. It means staying with the feeling without immediately trying to make it go away. And for a lot of us, that feels completely unnatural. We live in a culture that treats every emotion like a problem to be solved, something to optimize, hack, or turn into a plan. So sitting with discomfort can feel almost, well, wrong. But here's what most people don't realize: when you actually allow an emotion, you meet it with presence instead of resistance. And that usually starts to shift it, often within minutes, actually. It rises, it peaks, and then it begins to fall. It's like a wave, what keeps us stuck isn't the emotion itself, actually. It's the resistance to it. It's the bracing, the tension, the trying to escape it. That's what makes it last. And I remember actually working with a client, a man who was in his 40s. He hadn't cried in over 20 years. He described himself as someone who just didn't get emotional. But over time, it became clear he hadn't lost his emotions. He'd learned to suppress them so completely that he'd numbed his entire range. He didn't feel the lows, but he also didn't feel the highs. His wife once said it felt like living with someone behind glass. Anyway, the work we did together was slow, really slow. But the first time he actually let himself cry, like really allowed it, he said it felt like something cracking open, not breaking, opening. And those are very different things. Step 4 then, feel it in the body. Once you've named the emotion and you've allowed it, this is where you drop out of your head and into your body. So instead of thinking about the feeling, you start noticing it. Where is it in your body? What does it actually feel like? Is it tight, heavy, hot, cold, buzzing, sharp, dull? Is it in your throat, your chest, your stomach, your arms? This isn't a metaphor. These are real physical sensations, and learning to stay with them is incredibly powerful. There are whole approaches built around this idea. Things like EFT, emotional freedom technique, or tapping, which work with the body while you stay connected to the emotion. It helps release what's been stored, and I use versions of this in my own work. And I've seen some pretty profound shifts. Sometimes things that have been stuck for years start to move surprisingly quickly. Not always, not for everyone, but often that it really matters, often enough that it really matters. And there's also a really simple way you can start doing this yourself, something I call breath bridging. Instead of pulling away from the sensation, you stay with it and you use your breath to support that. So you do a slow inhale, and as you exhale, you soften towards that sensation instead of bracing against it. So rather than fighting what you feel, you're creating just enough safety in the body for it to move. Step 5, express, because emotions need somewhere to go. Not always to another person, though connection does matter, and we'll get to that. But they do need an outlet. So one of the simplest and most powerful ways to do this is writing. Just getting it out of your head and onto the page, messy, unfiltered. No one else is ever going to read this. And there's research from psychologist James Penbaker who found that expressive writing, so putting your thoughts and feelings into words, even just for 15, 20 minutes a day, can lower stress hormones, strengthen the immune response, and improve overall well-being. So this isn't just a nice idea, it works. Movement is another outlet. Walking, shaking, dancing, running, anything that gets the body involved, because movement helps complete the emotional cycle. And if you can, do it in nature. There's something about being outside, the light, the air, the movement, and that helps your nervous system settle in a way that's hard to replicate indoors. And then this sound, humming, sighing, even just letting out a long audible exhale. That's not being dramatic, it's your nervous system regulating. One client came to me after months of feeling numb but tired. She wasn't in crisis, she was just holding everything in, and the pressure of keeping it together at work, showing up for everyone else, never letting anything spill over was building. And when we explored expression, she started small, writing for 5 minutes before bed, no editing, no analysing. At first it was stiff and awkward. Then one night she wrote 3 pages of anger she didn't even know she still had. After that, she said, I slept properly for the first time in months. Later, she began walking every evening, no phone, just breathing and moving, and noticed tears coming up at random moments. That wasn't falling apart. That was her body finally releasing what it had been carrying. Step 6, seek connection, because this part is essential and often overlooked. We're social beings. Our nervous systems are designed to regulate through safe connection with other people. So when you share what you're really feeling with someone who can just be with you without judging, without trying to fix, something shifts, not just emotionally, but biologically. And this is what Stephen Porges talks about, the social engagement system as one of our most powerful pathways to safety. And being truly seen by another person is one of the most healing experiences we can have. Now, I know this one isn't easy for everyone. If you grew up in an environment where vulnerability didn't feel safe, opening up like that can feel genuinely scary, and that makes perfect sense. But if you have even one person, a friend, a partner, someone you trust who can hold space for you, that relationship matters more than you think. Protect it, invest in it, because even just being in the presence of someone safe, not fixing, not analysing, just being, can be incredibly regulating. Step 7, integrate. This part is one that almost no one talks about. After an emotional experience moves through, there's a kind of digesting that needs to happen. So integration is about gently making space, or gently making sense of that emotion and what that emotion was telling you. Because emotions aren't random, they're information, signals about what matters to you, what feels threatened, and what's needed. For example, anger might be pointing to a boundary that's been crossed, fear to something that doesn't feel safe, sadness to a loss, shame, often learned early on, to a belief that something is wrong with you. And when you start to see emotions this way, not as problems, but as messages, as information, your whole relationship with them changes. One of the best ways to support this is through reflection. So that's not forcing answers, it's just creating space to notice what's there. So again, that could be journaling, or simply sitting for a few minutes and letting your mind settle, not trying to empty it, just observing again what comes up without any judgment. Because when you give yourself that kind of space, insight tends to arise on its own. And there's one more piece here that I think really matters, and that's meaning. The sense that what you go through isn't just random, that it fits into a bigger picture somehow. Now, you've probably heard of psychiatrist Viktor Frankl, and he wrote that people can endure almost anything if they can find meaning in it. And I see that all the time. People who move through difficult emotions most deeply are often the ones who can find some thread of meaning within them. So let me now say something about what processing emotions is not, because there are a few traps here that are really worth knowing. It's not rumination. We touched on that earlier. Rumination is going over the same thing again and again in your head, replaying the conversation, rehashing what happened, telling the same story on a loop without anything actually shifting. Remember, emotion is movement. So the problem is that tends to make you feel worse, not better, and it tends to keep you stuck in it. And this is where some of the criticism of therapy has a point. If you're just revisiting the same pain over and over without building the capacity to move through it, it can end up reinforcing it. So good processing has direction. Something changes and it moves. Imagine, for example, you had a tense exchange with your manager. You spent the evening replaying it, what you should have said, what they meant, how unfair it felt. You tell a few friends the same story. And by the end, you feel worse. You're circling the same emotional drain. Lots of mental energy, but no real movement. Processing looks different. You pause, you notice what was really stirred up, maybe a fear of being criticised or dismissed. You sit with that feeling, you make sense of it, and something starts to ease. That's direction, that's movement. And it's also not just venting for the sake of venting. There's this idea that if you just let everything out, say whatever you feel to whoever will listen, you'll feel better. But that's not always true, because if nothing is shifting, if there's no reflection, no integration, venting can actually amplify the emotion instead of releasing it. So the question to keep it in mind, is this moving somewhere, or am I just going in circles? And this would look like you calling a friend after a rough day and launching into everything that went wrong, the rude email, the meeting that derailed, the person who didn't pull their weight. You go over it again and again, getting more wound up as you talk. That's venting without movement. It might feel releasing in the moment, but afterwards you're still buzzing from the same frustration. Processing instead might mean sharing what happened and pausing to notice what it brought up. Maybe feeling overlooked or unsupported, and exploring what you actually need next time. That's when things start to shift. And one more thing, processing is not performing, especially in the age of social media, where emotional expression is often public. It can look like processing, but it's not always the same thing. Real processing is usually quiet, it's internal, it's messy. It happens in ordinary, unglamorous moments, and it doesn't always look good from the outside. So this would look like, for example, you post online about feeling burned out, people comment, you get validation, even perhaps lots of empathy as well. It looks like you've processed something, but inside, nothing's really settled. You're still exhausted, still unsure what to change. That's performing, not processing. Real processing might be closing the laptop, sitting with the discomfort, journaling, talking honestly with someone you trust. It's usually quiet and unfiltered, more about finding truth than being seen. So here's what I want you to take away from all of this. You're not broken for feeling things deeply. You're not weak for struggling to process them. You were probably just never taught. Most of us weren't. But this is something you can learn. The tools exist, the science is there, and your brain and body are capable of change. You can get better at this. So if you take anything from this, let it be this. Check in with your body, name what's there, pause before reacting, breathe, move, get outside when you can, stay connected to people who feel safe, write things down, and most importantly, be patient with yourself, because emotional intelligence isn't something you arrive at, it's something you practice. And like any practice, it deepens over time. If you've been holding it all together on the outside while something inside feels like it's quietly struggling, there is another way, not perfect, not pain-free, but more real. And here's what people don't tell you. When you stop suppressing the hard emotions, the good ones come back stronger too. The joy, the love, the aliveness. You don't just feel less pain, you feel more of everything. If this resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need it. If it helps you, subscribing really does support the work I'm doing and helps me keep making videos like this for people who need it.